Thank you for tuning in to Gods, Demons, and Magic. This is your host, Sri Sachinandan Das. We're continuing to explore the Egyptian mysteries by Iamblichus, and in this ancient text, the Egyptian priest Abaman is explaining the supernatural world to the Greek philosopher Porphyry. He's talking about the various types of gods, daemons, half-gods, and how they all relate to each other, comparing and contrasting them, and also discussing the nature of human beings. In our last episode, we compared the daemons with the gods, and now we're talking about how the half-gods or demigods compare to the daemons. So, of course, daemons are supernatural beings which exist between the realm of gods and the realm of men. And they're servants of the gods, and they fulfill the various desires of the gods, and they perform various functions in relationship to humanity, such as bringing human beings into their bodies at the time of conception. And one of the functions of daemons as well is to uplift human beings, at least the good daemons, to kind of bring the human being upward in consciousness and in alignment with the gods. And of course there are also bad daemons, which if you sort of draw your consciousness into their realm, perhaps they're a daemon dealing with sex or with addiction or with fear, anger, or hatred. And that element of reality is sort of like their energy. And you can draw your consciousness into them if you're spiritually weak and become degraded by them. Otherwise, you can listen to the guidance of the higher daemons, and in particular your personal daemon, and be uplifted and guided into harmony with the divine will, and your consciousness raised and purified in communion with the gods. But there's another type of being which are called half-gods, and basically they're the products of a relationship between a god and a human. These are individuals like Hercules or Perseus, and they're very powerful heroes that exist within, especially in the Greek traditions, like in the Iliad and Odyssey, and these various ancient texts, which are really their religious texts. And the purpose of these texts are to give ultimately moral guidance and to sort of exhibit the values of that particular people and to carry it on through generation after generation in a very enlightening and entertaining way. And so the stories of the half-gods, they're really the religious literatures of these ancient peoples. And the acts they perform are not only valorous and entertaining and inspiring, but they have deep spiritual meaning. In fact, you'll see in the occult world and various mystical traditions, the 12 trials or achievements of Hercules, those are synonymous with sort of the evolution of the soul through 12 different stages of purification and enlightenment. Each particular task of Hercules represents a conquest of the soul over illusion or over matter or Maya, and gradually a strengthening of the soul. And the soul, in a sense, is guided upward by the example made by Hercules. So there's sort of deep spiritual meaning which is seen in these various stories of these half-gods. And so, you usually have a god like Zeus or Poseidon or something. He lays with a human woman, a queen or something, and from them is born this spectacular child. And this child exists, oftentimes you'll see, after their sort of worldly pastimes are concluded, they're raised among the stars. And so they exist on the astral plane as well. And as we'll read coming up, or we hear coming up, they can also be brought forth or conjured through magic ritual and interacted with. And so really, from the perspective of Abaman, these half-gods, they exist, unlike daemons who are sort of via mediums between humanity and God. The half-gods exist on the astral plane as a kind of like a guide for mankind. Like they're absorbed in human affairs and concerned with humanity, and they stand as a kind of moral guide and virtuous guide, and almost like a waypost towards spiritual elevation. And so they're really sort of like strong spiritual manifestations within the path of mankind specifically. And so the half-gods, they arise from a different source than the daemons. The daemons, they arise from the generative, creative power of the gods. As we heard some episodes ago from the Greek conception, the daemons are born from the goddess Chaos, who's really the goddess of the air, the air that we breathe. And the daemons have bodies that are made primarily of the element of air. And so you have this kind of like the unfoldment of the universe and the the creative power of the universe is manifesting in the shape of all these various gods. And the daemons are a kind of diminutive expansion of that generative, creative power that comes from the time of universal manifestation. And their job is to really manifest the world, or to assist the gods in creating the world according to the divine plan or the divine order. And so they're really manifestors of nature itself. And they also are guardians. They're like guardian spirits. And they guard those who come into existence within the world. And as well as I mentioned, bringing souls into their particular body at the time of birth or conception. Whereas the half-gods, they're quite a bit different. When the half-god lays with a human being, it actually injects within the human being not just sort of like, semen or something, but the life force of the god themselves. It's almost like an expansion, or the power of the god goes into that particular half-god. And their job is then within human society to sort of be a guiding light, a powerful explosion of godly energy within the line of mankind. You have sort of like this line of mankind extending through time. And within the universe, mankind is very small. We're like a very small creature, very limited in our consciousness and ability, with great spiritual potential, but not much. We're nothing compared to the gods. And yet, as thousands of generations pass, you'll find, an explosion of godly power within the human line in the form of these half-gods, where God will come down and inject their life force, part of themselves in essence, into the human, you might say, genome, And the job of these gods then is to be like a guiding light to humanity and to create an example, and to also lay down these spiritual principles and morals and things like that. And they give direction to mankind, and they promote the reasoning of mankind, sort of like the higher capacities of mankind are brought upward by their existence within our plane. And so while these half-gods and daemons, they're more or less like supernatural beings, sort of between mankind and the gods, men really exist on two different levels. We can either exist on a kind of liberated, enlightened level, which is what we as human beings should be striving for, or we can exist on a lower conditioned level, which is our level now. And when mankind, or the souls of men or souls of women, humankind, when they're enlightened, it's almost like a totally different type of creature. And we'll talk about that in episodes to come, because according to Iamblichus, you can draw enlightened humans, the souls of enlightened men, down in through magic ritual as well. And they're very different than the souls of humans that are bound within this world like you or I. What to speak of those humans which are bound in a lower level of consciousness or manifestation, such as ghosts. You can also call forward the ghosts of dead human beings, and you can interact with them, and so they're very different. So mankind essentially exists within a state of bondage or material bewilderment and confusion, or a state of enlightenment. And although we, as I said, we're very small in the greater scheme of things, and our consciousness is sort of like narrowed or bound within this human form, which is a very narrow, small perspective on reality, we can reach a very high level of consciousness in this particular body, with the help of the gods especially. Like the gods are eager to kind of interact with us and communicate with us and to elevate our consciousness. And we can actually elevate our consciousness higher than the daemons. Like as a human being becomes enlightened, according to Abaman, the consciousness of the human being can raise higher even than the angels. It's very interesting because, as we'll see in coming episodes, various types of supernatural beings are mentioned by Abaman, not just Greek or Egyptian gods and daemons and half-gods, which are primarily, like you might say, Greek, but also angels, which are Christian and Kabbalist and Jewish, and archangels as well as other types of beings such as archons, who are more Gnostic entities. So we'll talk about those coming up more. But the human consciousness can be raised even higher than the angels, according to the Egyptian priest Abaman, we can achieve enlightenment or liberation from matter. And the source of the soul is ultimately beyond matter. The source of the soul is in the absolute platform. It's in the one, the good, or you could even say within the realm of God, right? So the souls come from the platform of associating with God and come down into the world, are entangled within it. But in our pure form, we're very great. And the human form of life is meant to reestablish that greatness or to unfold that consciousness once again. So the human beings, essentially, we are, we're sort of bound within this network of influence of first of all, the gods, and then the daemons as well as these other supernatural beings. And we're really almost like wrestling with these different energies and making choices. Do we want to follow good daemons and be elevated? Do we want to come back into the association of the gods, elevate our consciousness, become pure and pure until we attain enlightenment? Or do we want to become degraded and sort of focus on those lower aspects of nature, those more malefic daemons, like the daemons controlling lust or primal desires and sinful desires and destructive desires? Do we want to go that way and be dragged down into, more degraded states of bondage? So there is this sense in which, we're on this divine path, and we do receive power and energy from the gods and daemons, as well as we receive inspiration and energy from the half-gods, right? They're these kind of like divine guides within human society which point us the right direction. And whereas these other beings, such as gods and daemons and half-gods, they're really fixed in their nature. Like they are who they are, The god is who he is. He doesn't change. The daemon is who he is. He has that job, that position, that realm within matter he's in control of. He doesn't change. And the half-god, he's not quite a man, He's half of a god. He has that power of the god within him, and he is who he is. And he's going to remain like that, throughout the creation of the universe. Whereas the rest of us, the souls, the human beings, we have a movable nature. It's not fixed. We're sort of transmigrating life after life into different bodies and experiencing different bodies. And so we're almost like a chameleon. Was that Boy George song, Karma, 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 Chameleon? So we're moving through these different lives. And of course, these ancient Greeks, they believed that before you're even born, you actually choose a particular life, and then the daemon will take you, and you pull a lot, you might say, in the underworld, and the daemon will take you to that particular body, and you're forced to accept that body as it is determined to live according to the fates. The triple goddesses of fate. They've sort of constructed a particular life, and that life is more or less already planned out according to divine law. And then once you choose that lot and accept that life, and once the daemon brings you into that particular body, you're forced to accept it, and you must sort of endure it for better or for worse. And this is very similar, of course, to the Indian or the Vedic idea of the law of karma, except it's not that you choose a lot in order to get a particular body. You've sort of earned that body, or it's been created by your past activities in previous lives. But either way, the idea is that you're moving through body after body after body. One day you may be a young girl in a fishing village, or you may be a young girl in a fishing village living a simple life, and then you're taken captive by some slave raiders and you die in captivity. And in the next life you're born as a man, a powerful chieftain of a tribe in Africa or something, and you're a great warrior within that tribe, and you die in old age, a powerful, respected individual. And in another life, you might be, like a bread maker in a city or something like that. So in this way, it's like our form is constantly changing. And we'll see coming up that when the souls of men are sort of summoned or conjured in magic ritual, oftentimes their form is always changing, because it's like the form is not fixed. So the form itself, it's almost like, even though the soul may remain the same, how we express our identity and the mask or the face that we wear, even when summoned within rituals, is constantly changing. So that's the nature of mankind. And so in this way, we also have different ideals. different religions, different philosophies, different ways of thinking. It's not just the physical body that changes, but say, for example, you're born in Mexico or you're born in the U.S. or Canada, you're going to have greatly different views of the world, greatly different perspectives. And that's why people argue in politics, right? Because everybody's looking from a different perspective. And so mankind not only changes its bodies, but changes its perspectives. You might be born, for example, say in one life you're born in North Korea, and you have a certain political perspective towards America or something. In the next life you're born in America, and you have a certain political perspective towards North Korea. So in this way it's like, you're constantly shifting back and forth, oftentimes between radical worldviews. So it's like as the human being moves through life after life after life, not only are you exchanging the various forms that you live in, and you're exchanging the various types of food you eat and the clothes you wear, the culture that you live in, the land that you love, all of these things constantly changes, but even your worldview and the opinions that you hold, all of these things are constantly changing. So almost like a dramatic actor on a stage, the ancient Greek stage is taking off masks and putting on masks. As they say, like the world is a stage, right? So the human being is constantly moving through these different acting roles. And also mentioned by Abaman is that human beings kind of clump together according to their shared characteristics. As you say, birds of a feather flock together, right? So you'll see people will group together based on shared ethnic identity. For example, a person from a certain ethnic background, say he moves to a city or goes to a high school or something like that, the tendency is, say he's new to a particular school, and very quickly that individual will find people from the same either ethnic background or have the same interests, like the same musical tastes or the same religious background. So, generally when we share characteristics with people, we sort of are drawn to them almost like in a magnetic way, and we bond together with them. So this is another nature of mankind, is that we form these groups, and then because we're always changing, we're always separating. Like you may have a particular group of people that you have shared interests with, but as your interests change, then you break apart from that association and you clump together with some other people. And this is happening within this lifetime. Many times you may change your group of friends or where you live or where you work, things like that. But it also happens lifetime after lifetime. Not only do you change the country that you live in, but you also even change your family. Like your mother and father, you love them very dearly, but in your next life you'll clump together with a new group of family, a new mother and father and brothers and sisters, and you'll stay together with them, in a tight bond of familial love throughout that particular lifetime. And then that's broken, and you'll clump together with another group in your next lifetime. So in this way, we are constantly shifting our form and our ideas and our beliefs. As we mentioned in the previous episode, the gods are beyond human reason. Men are unable to understand the gods through sort of our puny intelligence, but we imagine ourselves to be able to, and we try to understand the gods through our reason. And so doing this, Abaman warns us that we become carried away by our own emotions and misinterpret things. We form our own judgments about the gods based on our previous personal experiences. So in this way we sort of anthropomorphize the gods. Not that the gods don't have personalities and character and behave in many ways similar to us, but we sort of drag them down to our level and project upon them our own experiences. The gods must be like us. And, I personally feel this in many ways is a kind of a warning by Abaman to the Greeks in general, because Porphyry was really kind of asking about the nature of the gods and sort of hinting that the gods seem to be immoral. Like if you look at the activities of the Greek gods, they're doing all sorts of very human activities, sleeping with each other, trying to capture each other's wives, and engaged in all sorts of sort of negative behavior sometimes. And Abaman seems to be saying, this is just my personal opinion, that, the Greeks seem to be projecting their own personalities and tendencies upon the gods. and that it's not good to do this. Whereas Abaman, his particular conception of the gods, and perhaps the Egyptian conception of the gods, is that the gods are really pure and perfect in their behavior, and they're illuminated by the One, or the platform of transcendence, and their activities are in harmony with the One. They're sort of like manifestations of God within the world, and therefore they act in a very pure way. And one shouldn't, out of ignorance of the gods, project human weaknesses upon the gods. And because the Greeks have this kind of conception of gods in many ways as being selfish or even carnal, that the Porphyry's asking, are the gods tempted by these sacrifices? Are you able to control them? Are you able to make a deal with them? Are they lusty for these sacrifices, and somehow, you're able to manipulate them and get what you want? And so Abaman is saying, no, the gods are really above this. Sometimes one may see that just as you offer some sort of ritual to the gods, you offer worship to the gods and prayer to the gods, you may do that to another human being, right? And like a king or something like that, a tyrant, some powerful, scary individual, and people are cowering before him and offering prayers and doing ritual and worship, and he seems to be very satisfied by that. He's like gluttonously accepting the worship and very pleased with himself. So the gods are not like that. The gods don't accept worship in that particular mood, and it's not like their egos are satisfied by worship, such as men are. So just because men react in this way to being worshipped, we shouldn't conflate that or project that onto the gods, that they have similar selfish interests to be satisfied by worship and admiration and reverence. And rather, as these things are offered to mundane men, they should be offered to the gods with a much higher level of reverence, and also in a way that's unstingy, that's not selfish, rather that's very selfless and loving, and with great admiration and care. Then these same types of worship should be offered to the gods, because they're on a much higher level. So thank you very much for listening. If you found value in this, please like and subscribe. If you're listening on iTunes, please visit srisachinandana.com/iTunes and leave a positive review. Thank you again, and we hope you'll join us next time on Gods, Demons, and Magic.